Hello everyone, welcome to another live hangout here at Voice Essentials. And as you can hear in my voice, I'm still not 100%. I'm close, but my voice is taking a little bit longer to recover. For those of you who are new to the show, I was sick last week. We couldn't hang out. My apologies to everyone who put it into their schedule, and we hang out here every Monday, Australian Eastern Standard Time at 1 p.m. But last week I couldn't because do you know where I was? I was in bed. I just got hit with what I think was just your average cold and flu, but it gave me a good kick up the pants. And so I've been recovering, and I pretty much spent all of last, not this weekend just gone, the weekend before, Saturday, Sunday, much of Monday in bed. So slowly recovering, and actually in myself feel pretty good, but as you can hear, my voice has a little worse for wear because of the amount of coughing and actually a lot of sneezing. I won't go into the graphic detail, but there was a lot of gunk. Let's just put it that way. It was quite significant. But we're back. So today we're going to kind of have a shorter Q&A, just because I didn't want to not hang out with you all, but equally it will be a bit of a shorter one as I just nurse my voice back to full health. Just let me tell you what we'll be doing next week. We'll be doing a mini topic. I've already organized that this morning. I won't tell you what the subject is, but suffice to say, I think you'll walk away really encouraged next week. So if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do so. And when you subscribe, hit the white bell icon, because that's then going to make sure that YouTube sends you a notification whenever we hang out, and that way you won't miss next week's show. You also need, excuse for those of you who tune in every week, just give me a moment while I introduce how we do things, because there are quite a few new people coming and checking out and hanging out with us here at Voice Essentials as a part of the community. Really, the people that hang out live with the live show and in the Facebook group, that's really where the community is. There's a lot of other people who are watching the Dr. Dan Voice Essentials videos online, but the real essence of the community hang out here in the live, and there are more people doing so. So let me just highlight a few things, and be patient with me while I do. Firstly, it is a to write a comment. You can see the comments going along. Is it? Oh, I always get it wrong. It's up that side. You can see the comments live right now. For you to write a comment, you must be a subscriber. We do that to mitigate and reduce, troll comments. When we're not seeking to completely, veto people, but equally, you know how online spaces are. We do try to be a really healthy, encouraging, mature, not for mature audiences, it's a family show, but, just to express a level of maturity in how we conduct ourselves in this community. And if you're able to do that, we would love you to be a part of our group. It is a wonderful community. So much so that I couldn't not hang out with you again today. So there's that. So make sure you subscribe. We're going to do a quick Q&A today. So if you have questions, our wonderful moderator Linda, who, if you're new, you will get to know because she's always in the show, moderating the chat. If you've got a question, what you do is you type your question into the comments, into the live chat, I should say, and Linda will take your question down. Remembering you must be a subscriber to leave a question, and then Linda will grab that. She puts it into a document for me, which I can see off screen, and we answer it. If you absolutely 100% must have your question answered today, then make sure you leave a super chat with that question, and we prioritize said question. And that's how we do it. Yeah, there's really no questions regarding singing, there's no questions off limits. Most questions I'm able to answer, most, and if I can't, I always tell you. Because, you know, I've been doing this singing teaching thing for nearly, do you know what, I think it's either 28 years or 29 years. I think it's 28 years this year. I was telling a student, I've been in this studio space. Let me give you a wider shot. Let me see if I can bring that up. Hang on a second. How do I do that? I do it this way, I think. So I've been in this space. Can you see that? So I've been in this space here for around about, since 2001. So 22 years. Wow. As I often say to my students, they don't let me get out much. So I've been doing this singing teaching thing for quite some time. What I haven't been doing for very long is the reaction videos. And man, do reaction videos get a reaction? Like, they get a lot of views, but they also get some heated reaction. If you're one of the people that are new to my reaction videos, you've seen the reaction videos, and YouTube have been kind enough to recommend my live show to you, welcome, firstly. And secondly, I do want you to know, and my community in general already know this, but my comments when I'm doing my reaction videos are very much through the lens of education. I have resisted doing reaction videos for a long time, and there are people, I'm sure people will jump into the comments right now and let you know. I was aware of reaction videos from years ago, and I kind of made a decision I wasn't going to do them, in part because I knew the response that they would get. And in one sense, it like a misunderstanding of the way I approach voice and the educational nature of what I do. And that has proven to be the case, it must be said. I just saw Kelly's comment. Well, yes, the community had been asking for reaction videos from me for many years. I acknowledge that, Kelly. I was slow to the party, but you, of all people, Kelly, you know why. Because my heart is to encourage, to build, to lift up and educate. It's very difficult during a off-the-cuff reaction video to really communicate that the spirit and the intent that I approach my teaching with, aside from not making intentionally derogatory remarks. So if you have been watching my videos and you're new to what I do, please know that everything that is about Voice Essentials is about education. And at no point will I intentionally look to be negative, or I am critical, as in I provide criticism that is productive, that is hopefully educational, so that we can understand what the voice is doing and perhaps why the voice has done it. And I do that with the background, as I just explained, of nearly 30 years of professional level teaching, and the fact that I do have a doctorate in this field. The Dr. Dan thing is not just a fun label. It actually is. I have a full dissertation of nearly 100,000 words sitting on my shelf that gave me that. So it is coming from that angle that I make my comments. That is not to say that I am infallible, that I get it right 100% of the time. I don't. And when I don't, I acknowledge that. And in fact, there's a couple of reaction videos that I took down that actually, ironically, were going gangbusters, were in the tens of thousands of views within days. But some people pointed out some misinformation in the videos that I had to acknowledge and go, yeah, do you know what? I was not on my game there. That is not the standard I'm looking to keep to as far as the level of information and accuracy of information. So I took them down. I did that at the expense of views and likes and yada yada. So that's the intent. That's the point that we come at this with. And so I hope that you hear that if you're new to the show. And if you are new to the show, you'll also know that I'm not normally a baritone. I am very much a tenor. So I can already feel my voice flagging. So I'm going to get to some questions, and we've got, let's do something. Let's do something fancy. We'll start the questions off with this. Okay, so let's I know that's as good as it gets. It's just me and Linda running this show. But we'll get into the Q&A. So there is a question from Steve. I'm looking in the Q&A, like the chat, to see if Steve is there, and he's not there. But I'll leave. I'm going to answer Steve's question because it's from like way back in July 10th, so nearly a month ago. And I thought it was a great question. Steve, I hope you get to hear the answer to your question when you listen back to the show. Steve is just making a question around compression, wanting to know what vocal compression is. He doesn't quite understand it. And that's understandable, because the thing with, and I hate to sort of reflect back on the reaction videos again, but one of the challenges that we face in the voice teaching world, in our commentary on singing, is terminology. We still, and we probably never will, have a completely codified index of language, terminology, that every singer on the planet, every singing teacher, more to the point, is required to use. Every singing teacher is using a slightly different glossary of terms. And it is incumbent on said singing teacher to always give an explanation around, well, when you use the word compression, what does that mean? So there is some helpful starting points, Steve. And so what I want to just show you, so I because this was a question from a little bit, I was able to go and grab my trusty Dictionary for the Modern Singer by Matthew Hoch. This is a great start. I always find this a great starting point, because firstly, if it's not in here, there is I think there's a second, maybe there's even a third edition. I've got the first. So there might be more terms that Matthew has added. But certainly this gives us a good starting point. And vocal compression, I want to read you, he's actually got a listing in here, just like any dictionary. And so there's 3 points. He talks about vocal compression in regards to acoustics. He talks about it in regards to the audio signal, that you can put a compressor. So when you put compression on a voice, as number 2. Number 3, and this is what Steve is getting at. Number 3, within the speech level singing method, compression is used to describe the pressure with which the vocal folds vibrate. High compression indicates strong vocal adduction, whereas low compression indicates weak vocal fold adduction. That's a great starting point. But to understand that, we kind of need to understand the way vocal folds work. And the interesting thing about vocal folds, the complexity of the way vocal folds work, is that they're not only working on an X and a Y axis. They're also working on a Z axis. So your vocal folds are closing front to back. Yeah? A single cycle is where they close front to back, bottom to top. Yeah, not top to bottom, bottom to top. And so one closure is one cycle. But I didn't just say this way and that way, did I? I also said Z. So that's also represents the idea that vocal folds are also there. In fact, there's a few more sort of points. We'll walk through them. It comes down to the mass of vocal fold, the amount of vocal fold that comes into contact. So there is that. And that's going to sort of give us an indication, some insight into that idea of compression. But also in how long the vocal fold remains connected. So remembering that one cycle, yeah, like this, it's a ripple wave. It's not just clapping, yeah? It's one cycle. If I was to sing an A220, which is an A3, or an A4, let's say an A4, which is 440 times per second, that means that my vocal folds are oscillating one cycle. It's doing that 440 times per second. That note that the orchestra tuned to, A440, that's how fast your vocal folds are going. So we've got this, and we've got the mass, but we've also got what's called the close to open quotient. So that is the amount of time the vocal folds stay connected. Now this is where compression comes in. Compression is that sense of pressure of the vocal folds and the manner in which they come together, the shearing force that is the amount of, think of it as press. So we used to, another term that is used in a similar vein is pressed phonation. The way we increase compression or pressed phonation is by increasing subglottal pressure. And so when we get this increase in what's referred to also as phonatory threshold pressure, the pressure that the vocal folds are themselves holding back, and often if the pressure is really exaggerated, the false folds will bear down and add body to the true folds. The actual vocal, the folds that are coming together, what you might call vocal cords, but a lot of these days we mostly refer to them as vocal folds, is the generally used terminology, but vocal cords is fine. And the way that's coming together, and the mass and the amount of time they are closed compared to open, is going to determine the level of compression. And these things, so this is all the mechanical side of things. These things, and then we have to also account for phonatory threshold flow, the amount of air that is being permitted to flow through the vocal folds and how balanced or not balanced that is. These are the things that determine whether it's high compression, low compression, and as Matthew Hoch's definition identified, it originated amongst speech level singing, which is the Seth Riggs school of contemporary vocal instruction. And so compression is not a term I tend to use, in part because listen to how the level of explanation that I need to give. I tend to lean towards just talking about pressed phonation. All of the above are correct. I'm not suggesting one is righter than the other, but I think my students certainly seem to respond to just thinking about pressed phonation, because that in itself has this sense of heaviness to it, and they all have a place. High vocal compression, pressed phonation, is going to have a place in rock, in some forms of music theatre, rock type music theatre. There's a whole heap of reasons, and they're artistically driven, they're stylistically driven. high vocal compression is likely. Notice I'm couching all of my comments here. I'm not wanting to be absolutely categoric. High vocal compression is likely to fatigue the voice at a higher rate than lower compression. What I'm not saying when I say that is that one is healthy and one is not healthy. That is not the case. Thoughtless singing is unhealthy. When we sing mindlessly, when we're just opening our mouth and hoping for the best, that is likely to give you unhealthy singing, because you're not making, informed, educated choices with your voice. But people who are making very intentional choices with their voice that are stylistically derived, they're going after a very specific aesthetic, then there's more opportunity for us to sit the voice in a healthy, sustainable, efficient manner, efficient space. And so that is certainly something for you to consider when thinking about vocal compression. If you're wanting to develop higher levels of vocal compression, look to develop that over time, incrementally. Build the stamina, the strength, and the balance of the voice. Don't just suddenly load it up with Bon Jovi. If you've got to build to that level of singing, and also you have to be ready to accept what will your anatomy do and not do. And it's one area online that a lot of people are not prepared to accept, that every individual has an anatomical limit, and what one person's anatomical limit is not what the next person's is. And I think where this misunderstanding gets a little bit of has some legs online is most people are not realizing their full potential vocally when they start developing their singing. And so they think, oh, well, look, at a little bit of work and my voice is doing X, Y, Z. I must have limitless, like the boundaries must be non-existent and I can just do whatever I like. No, that's not what you can do. And if you do choose to do that, unfortunately, you may end up in a studio like mine with a voice that has experienced some wear and tear, may have fallen into disrepair, all because you threw caution to the wind and didn't acknowledge that you're a human being with a biological instrument that is going to be impacted by certain limitations. It's fun and exciting to explore what those limitations might be, but nonetheless, we do have limits. So, Steve, there you go. I hope that was helpful in talking about vocal compression. If that term is of really specific interest to you, then speech level singing is where it comes from. Do you know, it's funny because there's on the same page here, there's a reference to complete vocal technique, which is the Catherine Sutherland school of voice. She is really highly respected around distorted vocals, and in the same vein as Melissa Cross, and who has been good enough to come on to our show many times. And she uses language like, and this is where the terminology gets really, really interesting. She uses terminology like neutral, curbing, overdrive, and edge. And within her school of thought, there's nothing wrong with those terms if you understand what is meant by those terms. And so it's almost like we need to be, in the group to kind of get the terminology. But let's be careful that we don't use terminology as power. Because really, we don't need to, I do come up against this quite a bit with my reaction videos, actually, and so, I might use a particular term, and then someone wants to correct me, and in my choice of language or terminology, it's okay. There are things called synonyms. Synonyms. I think that's how you say it. Where you can have two words that mean the same thing, and that is allowed. Certainly it's allowed in the English language. So let's not get too hung up on terminology, but let's always choose to own and ground our terminology so that everyone can have access. It's all about accessibility. It's not about, lording it over people just because they don't know the in terms. I'd like to think those years are behind us. I'd like to think. I've got one other question. I'm looking here for some questions, Linda, but I'm not seeing. We're quite limited in our questions today. I think everyone's being very kind to me in not asking you questions, because can you hear my voice is starting to... I did see a comment here from BYKO. Try VocalZone lozenges for your ailment. They are intense. Tom Jones swears by them. Thank you for the suggestion. I know VocalZones are a well-known lozenge. The problem with VocalZones is the anesthetic value from the level of menthol in them. For when a person is using their voice, we do try to avoid that level of menthol. VocalZones are not typically something I recommend to someone who is going to be using their voice and placing it under load, like I am right now, in talking non-stop so far for 30 minutes. So I appreciate your intent. I've been hydrating. I've been steaming, so doing my my happy steamer, my nebulizing. So I've been doing all of that. I've been trying to employ good measures of vocal rest, and fortunately today I've had it's the flu season here in Australia, so my poor student base, they're falling like flies. I've had a lot of sick students. I don't think they caught it from me because I went to ground as soon as I got sick, but a lot of my students have been sick, and so today I've only taught once before I got to here, so consequently my vocal load has not been too high, which has been good. I do just want to answer one more question from Briar Rose, and again this was also from recently, and that is, she asked about Jodi Benson's video. I think Briar, you were referring, you've asked if I deleted it. I think, Jodi, you're referring to the video we had with Jodi Benson. Now, for those of you who don't know, we have special guests come on the show regularly, like of the highest standard, like Melissa Cross and Brian Gill and Shannon Coates, and like these names may not mean a lot to you until you come and listen to them talk about their area of expertise. Wow. So we had Jodi Benson on for the second time earlier this year. She was on the show talking about talking about, and I can hear myself hesitating at saying the word, because this is the terminology Jodi was advocating for the use of, talking about fat singers. That still rubs me the wrong way, because in Australia we don't use that sort of terminology. The term fat would typically be quite a derogatory term, but that's what the Fat Liberationist Network is advocating for, a reclaiming of that word fat. Interestingly, that show, as well as, and Jodi, I haven't taken it down. It's still there, so I don't know why you haven't been able to find it, because I didn't take it down. That show, as well as a number of other shows that I've hosted on the channel, particularly I'm thinking of one around transgender singers. Let me take a moment just to let you know something. It's partly about me as a human being, but also about our community here at Voice Essentials. I regularly and you don't know this because I delete these comments typically, but when I've got a guest, I do put the pronouns up next to our names. My pronouns, he and him. I don't make mention of them. They're just there. I always ask the permission of the guest. I ask them what their pronouns is pre-show, and we just put them there. I'm actually not out to make an intentional political comment. It was brought to my attention only last week, I think it was, that in the States, because I teach a lot of students online, and therefore I teach quite a number of US, North American students, and it was brought to my attention that in the US, the use of pronouns is a hot political debate at the moment, to put it blandly. Apparently that's probably an understatement of the year. I was blissfully unaware of that. I didn't know that. It's not the touchstone issue here in Australia that evidently in the US it apparently is. And so, I thought, well, I don't want to make unnecessary, because I get a lot of people who come on, oh, he and him pronouns, are you kidding me? Unsub. Well, if that's how you feel, then that's okay. Here at Voice Essentials, we are an inclusive group, whether it comes down to your ethnicity, your gender, your weight, regardless. What we don't allow or condone is people who want to shame others, people who are not able to be inclusive, whether it be religion. These topics, though I don't purposefully go about wanting to make comment on politically, they are areas that we as a community, I think, can allow. And if you're one of these people that, let's take for example the transgender, perhaps you're of a Christian faith, as I am, but perhaps your position around the Christian faith is that you're not able to accept that as in keeping with your faith. Well, just let it sit in tension. It doesn't have to be right, wrong, or indifferent. No one's going to make you change your mind on that here at Voice Essentials. We're here to talk about singing. And I know I'm talking about these issues, but I'm more talking about the inclusivity that we are building here at the channel. So I want you to know, as we come towards finishing up, that this community is about accepting everyone who is able to behave in an appropriate manner towards each other as fellow human beings who want to sing, who love to sing, and who want to develop their singing voice, or who are just interested in singing. And I think we need to continue to really value that. We need to really continue to, there's an old saying. I think it's from Battlestar Galactica. The price, it might be Star Trek. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance. We need to be continually vigilant around these areas as a community. We need to continually accept that not everyone is going to agree with everything that everyone says or believes. But that's okay, because here at Voice Essentials, what we all do believe in is that everybody can sing. And by everybody, I mean you, me, everybody, regardless of XYZ grouping. And so when we can really hold on to that central aspect of why we gather, I think we'll go a long way. We'll continue to go a long way, and that will be a good thing. Battlestar, I've just seen Linda is making a comment about Battlestar Galactica. Yes, do you know what? One of my favorite space shows was Battlestar Galactica. I loved Starbuck and Apollo, and I'm talking old school, like back in the 70s. Their fighter jets, like their spacecraft, were awesome. I just thought that was so cool. And I've actually even watched. I own. This is how nerdy I am. I own all of the old series and all of the new series, which were also awesome. We watched it all the way through to the end. Battlestar Galactica is cool, and I'm a nerd. I fully recognize it and accept that. Okay. And I've just seen the comment from Kelly. You are inclusive, and using pronouns allows others to feel safe. And that's the point, Kelly. Thank you for making that point. That is the point, is what I am trying to communicate by just simply placing the pronouns there. I am wanting to communicate to people of that subculture, of that grouping, that this is a safe space for them, that they will not be judged, in part because I'm not going to make a big deal about it. Like, you're a human being in front of me, and we're going to learn to sing. Every single singer brings something different to the table that they're looking to develop. Yes, a transgender singer often brings a certain number of boxes that they're wanting to tick. But so is a Christian singer, so is a rap singer, so is a fat singer. It's all singing. It's all singing, and here at Voice Essentials, we're inclusive. And I will be bold enough to say, and if that doesn't float your boat, then there are many, many other channels that will welcome you with open arms, where you don't have to contend. If you feel like your ideology can't handle that, that's okay. That's where you're at, and that's okay. You go with my blessing and grace to you, and I really hope you find a community that you can engage with and develop your singing. But here at Voice Essentials, for as far as I can see, that's what we're going to do. We're going to continue to be inclusive, and that's going to be a positive thing from my point of view, and I think the vast majority of people who do engage in the channel. Oh dear me! I said I wasn't going to talk for very long, and here we are today. We answered 2 questions. I hope that was helpful. I hope the vocal compression thing was helpful. I'm going to stop talking now because this is shot. Next week we are going to do a mini topic. Come along, you're going to be so encouraged. I promise. I'm not going to tell you what the topic is. Just front up next week. Make sure you subscribe. Hit the white bell icon. Hit the thumbs up button today if what we've talked about has resonated with you. I very much hope to see you again next week when I'm in better voice. I'm Dr. Dan. Sing well.